It's just 10 o'clock. Board members, staff, guests, and members of the public are reminded that the full authority board and committee meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the authority's website along with the official written minutes. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, and the general public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the full authority and or the KCCA Board of Directors. The recorded video of the full authority meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the full authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full authority. So with that in mind, welcome everyone. It's nice to see everyone's smiling faces again. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest to start off? Hearing none, let's move to item A, the first one on the agenda, the minutes of the meetings.
Mr. Chair, if I, just before we get into the business, if I can do the official roll call.
Oh, sorry, roll call.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Kravitz.
Here.
Jaguar.
Present.
Harvey.
Here.
Herbert.
Present.
Jones.
Here.
Mackey.
Present.
Peters.
Here.
Pelosa.
Present.
Warwick. Here. Winfield.
Here.
Mr. Chair, all members are present.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So let's get into the minutes of the meeting. So the October 21st full authority meeting. The minutes are attached. We had a chance to take a look at them. Are there any corrections or any notations at all from those minutes? Okay, hearing none. I need a mover and a seconder. That the minutes, sorry, Jones and Herbert, okay, that the minutes of the October 21st, 2020 full authority meeting be approved.
Kravitz.
Okay.
Sorry, Kravitz.
Yep. Yes.
Jaguar.
Yes.
Herbert.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Pelosa.
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
The minutes pass, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. In matters arising, media report.
Mr. Chair, I'll do the media report and the project tracking together as one.
Okay,
Obviously, we had an eventful weekend, both with the winds and nuisance flooding down in Port Stanley. Jen will have a full report in her watershed condition statement coming up. In terms of project tracking, it's been another busy month. Just a couple of highlights. Jennifer has completed her provincial water quality monitoring sampling for the MECP. We have an application submitted to the Great Lakes Local Action Fund for $36,000 to help with wetland creation and Phragmites treatment throughout the watershed. So we're hopeful for a positive response on that. And Betsy's been hard at work with the Canadian Chestnut Council and the Field Gnats on planting 50 native American chestnut trees down in Port Stanley. So that's a great project as well. The biggest project we've had undergoing over the past month, Joe has been instrumental in getting this off the ground, Joe and Rob. This is the new Evans Sisters Water Trail. So if you remember, we received funding from that estate to undertake this project. If you get a chance to go down there and take a look at it, it's going to look fabulous next summer. It already looks great and it's still a little bit muddy. But the changes to the shoreline, giving the public more access to launch canoes and kayaks, and just a visual presence on the Dalewood Reservoir, and improvements to our trails, widening widening the trail access from Dalewood Road down to this day use area. We're already getting really great comments back from the community that are out there seeing these changes takes place. So it's a really great project. Looking forward to seeing how it looks next summer.
That's great. That's awesome. Way to go, guys. Good. Okay, any questions at all?
And I'll get Jen to go right into the watershed condition statement. We'll do one overarching motion for these staff reports.
Yep, okay. Jen?
Yep. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I had to unmute.
No problem.
Yeah, November, the gales of November came early this November so far. So generally speaking, water levels are still pretty high. They're higher than normal, but lower than what they were last year. We did have our standard messaging out for the month of November. However, we upgraded to a watch on Saturday, and then again, we upgraded to a warning on Sunday for the wind event that was coming across the province. So if you just go to the next slide, please. So on November 15th, we were expecting peak winds around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which we got. They were in the 100-kilometer-an-hour range. I know that St. Catharines recorded 145 kilometers an hour, which is pretty crazy. Windsor was around 111. So with the winds coming from the southwest, we had some flooding on the beach, which is what we expected. Some of the pictures make it look a little worse than it is, but the water that pools on William Street by Mackey's, that tends to happen regularly, either with rain events or with wind. And by the time I left in the evening around 6:30, that water had actually disappeared out of the traffic circle. But the water and some debris did come up on the beach. We worked with Central Elgin to get some road closure signs put up to try to keep people out of that area, just because there's a little bit of uncertainty when you're dealing with storm surge. It did keep, I think, the larger group population out of the area, but it was still quite busy with people coming down to take a look at the pounding waves. But lots of photographers out, even a couple of kiteboarders taking a risk. Yeah, it was a good event to actually be able to see during the day.
Okay. So no permanent damage, nobody got washed away, anything like that?
Not that I have heard.
Okay, that's good news. Any other questions at all, folks? Okay, thanks, Jen. That's it's nice to hear that the levels are going down a little bit. Do you think that's a trend that will continue or not?
Well, sorry, Mr. Chair, we're in the typical flood season for the watershed. And there's the added, not risk necessarily, but because you don't always get full ice coverage on the lakes, like last year we didn't have a lot of ice on the lake, it means that there's more opportunity for storm surge events. So it's just something that we have to keep an eye on. I know it's where we talk a lot about wind events and high water levels in lakes, but it's something that we just have to constantly be aware of.
Okay, excellent. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on then to the Peacekeeper Park update, and that's Steve and Dennis, I believe.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll start, and Dennis can jump in as well too. So as per the direction of the board from our last meeting, Dennis and I conducted a site visit to Peacekeepers Park on October the 30th. We were also accompanied by Jim Herbert, our new board member. Jim wanted to get brought up to speed. So as far as some of the issues, so Jim was with us too. We met with a couple representatives of Peacekeepers, and we were there for about an hour and a half. Extensive notes, etc., were taken. Dennis and I then subsequently had a meeting with Joe and Elizabeth to sort of use that as a debrief of some of the things that we had learned, etc. Joe and Elizabeth also then provided us with some other details. There's been a number of emails that have gone back and forth between Elizabeth particularly and representatives of Peacekeepers to try and provide some clarification on some of the outstanding issues. This in turn is leading to a meeting that will take place next week on November 23rd with Dennis and myself and Joe and Elizabeth, and again, representatives of Peacekeepers, to go over these outstanding issues. Our intent then would be to report back to the full board at its December meeting as what we've learned and perhaps any recommendations that may come out of it. I don't want to prejudge anything, but it's the fact finding continues, and that's my report. I don't know whether Dennis wanted to add anything to that.
Well, that's pretty succinct at this time, Steve. I agree, and with that, after the next meeting on the 23rd, I think we'll be able to make recommendations at that point. So it's just giving them another chance to present their findings to us as the board members. So thank you.
Okay. Jim, how about you? Do you have any thoughts at all?
I don't really have any thoughts. I didn't want the board to think that I was butting in on the conversation, and Steve and Dennis welcomed me to come on the tour. I made a few comments during the tour, but I tried to stay back, but Steve was very welcome for any thoughts that I would want to push forward onto it. And it was quite the eye opener for me. I was very happy to go see the park. I'd never been there before, and it's a very interesting area to go visit if you've not visited. So that's about all I would say. I was happy to go to have a chance to see the park, do the tour. So anyway, thanks Steve and Dennis for letting me tag along. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any questions at all from the board? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Steve and Dennis, for your report. We look forward to next month, and we hope that the meeting next week goes well. So our next item is our proposed meeting dates for 2021. You can take a look, because I see we're not having a meeting in July. All meetings are scheduled as being virtual. Pretty straightforward. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add to that at all?
Mr. Chair, I'd just say I've put the meetings as virtual for now, simply as a placeholder. We'll have to see how things progress in the new year, and obviously those might change with feedback from the members.
Okay. Questions at all, board?
Comment, Jim Herbert.
Yes, Jim?
Thank you. I'm getting used to the virtual meetings. I'm looking at the weather this morning, get up and it's snowy and blowing, and here I just have to sit in my confines of my house and go online with it. So maybe January, February, March, or winter months, maybe that would still be good, even if you had a chance to meet in person. Maybe virtual might still be a good fit for winter months, so people don't have to travel to get there in the snow. I have no problem. It's easy for me to get there in the city, and I live in the city, but for people who have to travel, it might be a thought for the winter months, you just stay virtual. Just a suggestion.
You like sitting in your jammies too, don't you, Jim?
Well, I'm in Grand Bend today, so yeah, it's kind of nice to not have to travel all that way. So, okay, with that in mind, we have a recommendation that the staff reports under matters arising A through E be received. Need a motion and a
Peters.
second. Peters moved it.
Pelosa,
Pelosa seconded it. If you
On the
could-
motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, moving on, correspondence from the MNRF in-year funding reallocation for WECI, November 6th. Elizabeth?
Chair, this is really great news. It's a welcome news back from the ministry that allows the reallocation of funds mid-year. So this means that some projects that might not have got funding at the first installment could benefit from some of those unused funds. So it's good news all around. And
Excellent.
no further correspondence.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Motion to receive the correspondence.
Mackey.
Mackey and
Livingston.
Warwick.
On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Statement of revenue and expenses, anything at all, Elizabeth?
That wasn't included this month. It's not a reporting month.
Okay, new business. Great Lakes Local Action Fund proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Elizabeth mentioned in project tracking, we submitted an application to the Great Lakes Local Action Fund for $36,280.93. And that's to support wetland creation, Phragmites treatment, and some planting on adjacent lands to the wetlands. As part of that application process, we do require a board resolution supporting our application to the fund. So that's what I'm asking for today.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions at all, board? Okay, so the recommendation is that the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority support an application to the Great Lakes Local Action Fund for a total request of $36,280.93 in funding. Moved by
I would move it. Ralph.
Ralph, okay, seconded by,
Kravitz.
okay, from Dennis, is a seconder, okay.
On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes,
Motion passes.
okay, thank you very much. Okay, on to page 2 of the agenda. Provincial changes to the CAA Act. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just some background on this. You all remember back in June of 2019, Bill 108 amended the Conservation Authorities Act. And the major changes at that time was to define 4 core areas of mandatory programs. So risk of natural hazards, management of CAA-owned lands, the Clean Water Act, and other programs and services as prescribed. Some of the changes in that bill also required CAs to enter into agreements with municipalities for those non-mandatory programs that required funding, and establish a transition period in which that inventory of non-mandatory programs could be established and those agreements entered into. And it also clarified duties of members to act in the best interest of the authority in the watershed. Bill 108 changes were the basis for a series of consultations that we were undertaking in February of 2020. So you remember most members were able to attend that session in London. On November 5th, the province introduced proposed amendments to the CAA Act and the Planning Act in Schedule 6 of Bill 229, and that was the budget bill. Those changes do present some challenges and concerns to the CAs. MECP staff briefed CAs on the changes on November 9th. There weren't a lot of answers to the questions posed by CAs at that time by staff. Staff have indicated that the regulations are coming within the coming weeks, but really to get a better perspective on what these changes means, I think the details will be in those regulations. We know that the House rises on December 10th, and obviously the budget bill will have to be passed. So that doesn't leave a lot of time to talk about these proposed changes that are embedded within that budget bill. Next slide. I think the key concerns are highlighted here. Really, there's a possible hindrance to the Conservation Authority's role in their regulating development and engaging in review and appeal of the Municipal Planning Act applications. These new changes allow the minister to make decisions on permit appeals and issue permits without watershed data and expertise from the conservation authorities. A major concern, I think, is the redirection of members' fiduciary role from basically acting in the best interest of their municipality rather than the conservation authority's interests. And the timing. So at the November 9th meeting with ministry staff, they indicated that these changes would be implemented for CA 2020 budget. So the transition period would actually end at the December of 2021. So if that is the case, that's a lot of work that has to happen over the next year in terms of getting out to member municipalities, organizing that inventory of non-mandatory programs, and negotiating MOUs or agreements with each member municipality. Next slide. So I think the provincial goal has always been to improve consistency, transparency, improve municipal oversight of CAs, and streamline CAs permitting and land use planning. And I think over the last couple of years, CAs across the province have been attempting to work with the province towards those goals. Certainly our update to the administrative bylaw that we undertook in that time period hits on a lot of those points in terms of transparency and consistency. In 2019, for instance, KCC issued 71 permits, and all of those permits were done within the provincial timelines. And again, a provincial perspective across the province in 2018, CAs issued 11,781 permits. Only 28 were appealed, and of those, 23 were decided in CA's favor. Another point is, I think that we do have a good working relationship with our member municipalities and always try to attempt to continue to drive our self-generated revenue to a maximum proportion of our revenue that's budgeted. Our municipal levy is at 35%, and again, I'm always trying to look at new ways to increase the self-generated portion. The provincial portion of our budget in terms of revenue for the transfer payment coming from MECP for our mandated programs is 2%. Next slide. So in your advanced report, CO had kind of outlined the proposed amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act and possible implications to conservation authorities. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of those. I've tried to group them into categories. The first category is governance. And again, the biggest concern I have there is the duties of members are amended. So traditionally, when you're sitting at the CA board, you're supposed to be putting on your CA hat and leave your municipal hat to the side. Whereas now this reverses that. So every member is to act honestly in good faith and shall generally act on behalf of their respective municipality. The concern is that the municipal interest would overpower the broader watershed interest. And we all know that watersheds don't respect municipal boundaries. And that was one of the reasons why you have the responsibility to look at the watershed perspective at the board table. The other change is that traditionally it's been up to the member municipalities to appoint their representative to the board. The changes in this bill outlined that those can only now be municipal councillors. So there would be no more citizen appointments to the board through the municipalities. There is a question whether or not, because the act refers to municipal councillors, whether that could be changed or whether the intention was to be municipally elected officials. There was a question as to whether just leaving as municipal councillors, whether that would exclude mayors from sitting on the board. So that is a question that's been put back to MECP staff for clarification. The minister may now appoint an agricultural representative to the CA boards. There's verification that's needed there. We're unsure if this is meant to be a voting member and under what circumstances the minister would appoint an agricultural representative to the boards, whether it's the intention to appoint an ag rep to each board or certain boards based on concerns. I know other people have indicated concerns with why just the agricultural stakeholder group. Are there other stakeholder groups that want or would want representation at the board? And so again, there's clarification there needed, and maybe that clarification is included in the regulations, but we don't have the benefit of viewing those regulations at this time. The changes also limit the term of the chair and vice chair to 1 year with no more than 2 consecutive terms. And again, there's some concern there. We've certainly changed our administrative regulations. We used to work on a nominating committee where we kind of had those discussions and laid out, those positions of chair and vice chair. With the new administrative regulation, we've moved to a duly elected election that's open and transparent. And there's some questions, again, if you're limiting that, especially on smaller CAs, if that can happen, or you're going to have to be monitoring who's been chair and vice chair within the last 2 years to make that happen. The next slide, objects and powers and duties. So the proposed change narrows the object of the CA from providing programs and services designed to further the conservation, restoration, development, management of natural resources to only 3 categories: the mandatory programs and services, municipal programs, and other programs. Again, we're unable to really assess the impacts of that without the benefit of the regulation, which would detail what the nature and scope of those mandatory programs and services are. Another proposed clauses allow the minister to make regulations that would prescribe standards for the municipal programs and services and other programs and services. And again, verification is required there. Really, under what circumstances would the minister make those regulations to prescribe that? There's no provincial funding or support in those program areas from our understanding. And the potential that the regulations could restrict what the authority is able to do for its member municipalities or to further the purpose of the Act. Permitting enforcement, there's a lot of changes happening there relative to Section 28 of the Act. Applicants can now choose to seek a review of the authority's decision by the minister, or if the minister does not conduct such a review, to appeal it directly to the local planning and appeal tribunal. And an applicant would have 120 days after an application is submitted to appeal directly to the tribunal as well. It basically sets up 2 pathways for appeal an authority decision. And this may increase the workload for CAs. It's really not clear at this point, and increase the amount of time a permit appeal process takes. The minister can order not to issue a permit for an activity that may be prohibited under Section 28 of the Act. And then after making such an order, the minister may issue the permit instead of the CA. There's some concern there if the minister is issuing the permit, how do we ensure compliance with the minister's permit? Some of the changes, again, the elimination of stop work orders and narrowing the powers of entry without a warrant. Those are 2 things that the CAs have been asking for a number of years now. Especially the stop work orders is seen as an important enforcement tools that CAs have requested for a number of years. And without them, the only avenue we have is to conduct a costly injunction to stop unauthorized activities. Next slide. The land use planning, Schedule 6 includes an amendment to the Planning Act, removing CAs as a public body with no right to appeal the municipal planning decisions or be party to an LPAT hearing. CAs will be required to operate through the province's one window approach with these changes and coordinate comments through the MMAH. Clarity, I think, is specifically required if CAs would retain their right to appeal a decision adversely affecting CA-owned lands. So if we had an issue with our own lands, have we lost the right to appeal that decision to LPAT ourselves? The timing of this is another issue. The authorities will be required to enter into agreements with our member municipalities for programs and services that are not mandatory. An inventory and transition plan is to be developed and agreements negotiated. Again, as I mentioned earlier, staff of MECP during that November 9th meeting indicated that the intention was to have this implemented for CA 2022 budgets. So basically, we would be working throughout the next year to get all those agreements in place. I'm suggesting that the board may want to consider a longer transition no earlier than for fiscal year 2023. And this is when new members would be appointed following the October 2023 municipal election. Obviously, this has generated a lot of concern across the landscape. Ontario Nature is being very active with concerns that they have towards these changes, encouraging people to write emails to the various ministries involved. Conservation Ontario has requested meetings with MECP, MNRF, and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and is requested for delegation to the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs to voice some of their concerns. Slide. So I'll stop it there. There was a recommendation that was put out in the advanced package that we can look at, but it's a lot of information to take in, and I'll stop for questions from the members. And I don't know if you, Marianne, if we can change the screen just to faces, it might be more conducive to discussion.
Question, Peters.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a question on the governance slide. If someone thinks that I have not acted honestly and in good faith, who is going to be policing this? That, you know, in the municipalities, we have an integrity commissioner that, you know, if someone thinks we've done something awry, but so is there any indication as to who's going to police my activities? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't have an answer for that. No.
Okay. Any other questions? You'll have to call out. Grant? Okay.
Steve. It would seem that with some of the issues that the conservation authorities have been dealing with some of the dumping that's been happening in the area, and a lot of time Joe has been spent doing that, it seems that that's going to handcuff Joe's ability to monitor practices that are not conducive to the authority.
Okay.
It seems to be problematic in a lot of areas, and it was explained to me that a lot of these changes were to benefit farmers. Myself being a farmer for many years, I don't see it. As a public official, it looks like it's more geared towards developers accessing lands that they probably should. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you. Allison? You're muted.
Yeah, I've got it. I'm concerned a little bit about the appeals and the way that's going to go. You know, it looks like there's two different places where people are going to be able to go when they have a problem, i.e. a developer is upset about something. And it doesn't sound like the CAs are going to be taken into account there. It'll just be a decision made by people that may be an arm's length away and not have that background. So, you know, that would be my concern.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? You'll have to call out.
Question? Chair
Yes.
members?
Yep, Jim?
Thank you. Well, I'm looking at a lot of these things that they want to do, especially with the city and the municipal councillor. Has this been brought to the city for their interpretation on or agreeing with what they want to do? Do we have a choice on what they want to do? Can the city say, oh, we don't agree, we agree with what you want to do? Are these questions that have been asked or should be asked? Or I don't
Elizabeth?
recall anything coming to council that we were going to make these changes.
Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, I guess through you to Jim, my response would be my understanding from MECP staff is the changes relative to governance and municipal representation on the boards. Those changes were put there as a result of the consultations. I haven't necessarily seen the results of the consultations or what municipalities were asking for that. But that's my understanding from ministry staff, is that some municipalities were asking for those types of changes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
So
Mr. Chair, Dominique.
supplement through the chair.
Yes, certainly, Jen.
Who would these consultations been made with? I mean, would that not be something that would have to go through the mayor and brought back to council for discussion to see if we agree or not? I mean, I don't know if Councilor Peters has heard of anything that was discussed at city council, but I don't recall that ever coming to us. Or was that just something that was discussed with the mayors of each area and they come to that conclusion?
Elizabeth?
No, Mr. Chair, I think the changes that were outlined in Bill 108 the changes that were outlined back in 2019 under Bill 108 were consulted upon in February. And those consultations were with multi-stakeholders. So municipalities were part or welcomed to those consultations. I don't think the consultations happened with each individual municipality, but those consultations offered municipalities the opportunity to provide comment back up to MECP, and these changes are a result of that.
Is it something that we should be, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Is it something that we should be addressing our city council with? Or should we not, do we say anything about it? I don't know the protocols or the process. I'm hoping Councilor Peters there will be able to give me some suggestions on should we be doing anything or can we do anything? Or
I think if you're, certainly some of these changes aren't just a concern for the CA board, they would be concerns for member municipalities. So for instance, a number of our member municipalities choose to appoint what we have traditionally called citizen reps. So the City of London has opted for that. They have 3 members that sit on our board. They traditionally have made the choice themselves to appoint 1 councillor and then choose 2 citizen reps on the board. That type of choice for the member municipality to choose who they want to sit on the board would be taken away with these changes. And they would still have the 3 representatives, but it would have to be municipal councillors that they would appoint to the board. So it can be a struggle for those municipalities, if that's traditionally how you've liked to do that. There would definitely be a concern for those member municipalities to get back to the ministry on.
okay, thank you then.
Okay, Dominique.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my observation is that everybody seems to be reacting with their own concerns. And I'm wondering if anyone is asking, what were the concerns that this is responding to? And so like everybody just appears to be on the defensive. And we know that Minister Yurek did not wake up one morning and make those changes. So this is a solution. So we're all looking at the solution. And I'm wondering if anyone knows exactly in details what the problems are. What is this responding to? So personally, rather than a defensive letter that goes back with the resolution asking the ministry to address our concern, my letter back to the ministry would be to take the table that you have with amendment by amendment and request of staff to respond for each amendment to say, what is this addressing? What issue is this responding to that you heard? Because we know and we appreciate that this was a very comprehensive process. So we would like some more insights as to what you're responding to. And we would like to know how perhaps unintentionally the CAs have contributed to those issues. And perhaps we can also contribute ideas to tweaking some of the solutions. And to me, that would be a way more productive letter, because right now we're all looking at a solution. I don't think anyone knows exactly what the problem is. And they are expecting exactly what we're doing now. So I'm sure they're already prepared. And this type of reaction, like a defensive reaction, you need to address our concern, is not going to be as productive as we wish.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, you have a comment to that at all?
Chairman Steve, did any of you watch that show last night that went on for an hour about the amendments? Daughter Karen and I watched it on the internet last night. They had 4 speakers that talked about the issues, and everybody could respond with questions. And they did then address some of the questions last night. I'm just wondering whether any of the rest of you heard it.
No. Anybody at all? Okay, Ralph, where did you find that? Was it on YouTube or was it on one of the stations?
It was daughter Karen, who works for Upper Thames, who was aware of it, come down here, and we went on. The only thing we had to do was put in a letter of our postal code as to where we were. It was on for an hour. There were 4 speakers, and we could put questions in. They did not accept or talk to all of the questions, but there would have been a few hundred questions that were asked about that new amendment to the code.
Okay.
It was interesting.
Elizabeth or Marianne, did you know anything about that at all, or Joe? Well, it doesn't sound like it. Okay.
The only clarification I could add, Mr. Chair, is I think Conservation Ontario shared a Facebook post on it later in the evening before it started last night. I didn't have an opportunity to view it, but I think what Mr. Winfield is referring to was a webinar that was hosted by the Canadian Environmental Law Association.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's unfortunate that no one else was able to see it. Okay. Any other comments at all about the CA changes at all before we take a look at this motion? Is that you, Bill? Yeah. Oh, you're muted. Okay. Anybody? Grant?
Yeah, Steve, I do agree with Dominique's approach. It's a different way of looking at things that may get a better response from the province too, instead of a negative assault. Just ask them to explain why. Why did you change this? I don't disagree with Dominique's approach.
Okay. Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with Dominique's approach as well, but I also agree there was those public meetings to collect all that information, but then they seem to have missed a step, and then they come right out with their recommendations, but I think they forgot to share with everybody why they come out with what they come out with. So I think that it would be a good idea to pose a letter saying why did you come to these and how did you arrive at these? But also, I think we need to follow the recommended letter and make sure that everybody's aware, because I think just from what I hear that there's a lot of people who aren't aware of all these things because it's all happened so quickly.
Right.
At the council level anyway.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. So we have a motion. Let me just take a look here.
Marianne, can you go back to the PowerPoint, please?
So the recommendation Do you want me to read the motion or have you all read it? Hearing none.
It might be best just to take a second to review it.
Yeah, okay, so whereas the province has introduced Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act, Schedule 6, Conservation Authorities Act, whereas the legislation introduces a number of changes and new sections that could remove and/or significantly hinder the Conservation Authority's role in regulating development, permit appeal process, and engaging in review and appeal of planning applications. Whereas Kettle Creek Conservation Authority uses watershed expertise to protect residents' property and local natural resources on a watershed basis by regulating development and engaging in reviews of applications submitted under the Planning Act. Whereas the changes allow the minister to make decisions without CA watershed data and expertise. Whereas the legislation suggests that the minister will have the ability to establish standards and requirements for non-mandatory programs which are negotiated between the conservation authorities and municipalities to meet local watershed needs. Whereas municipalities and conservation authorities require a longer transition time to put in place agreements for conservation authorities to deliver for non-mandatory programs. Whereas Kettle Creek Conservation Authority believes that the appointment of municipal representatives on CA boards should be a municipal decision and the chair and vice chair of the CA board should be duly elected. Whereas the changes to the duty of members contradicts the fiduciary duty of a CA board member to represent the best interests of the conservation authority and its responsibility to the watershed. Whereas conservation authorities have already been working with the province, development sector, and municipalities to streamline and speed up permitting and planning approvals through Conservation Ontario's Client Service and Streamlining Initiative. Whereas changes to the legislation will create more red tape and costs for the conservation authorities and their municipal partners and potentially result in delays in the development approval process. And whereas conservation authorities manage natural habitats and water resources within our jurisdiction for the health and well-being of residents, conservation authorities work to prevent and manage the impacts of flooding and other natural hazards and work to ensure safe drinking water. Therefore, be it resolved that the province of Ontario work with conservation authorities to address their concerns by repealing and/or amending changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and the Planning Act, that the province of Ontario provide a longer transition period up to December 2022 for non-mandatory programs to enable coordination of CA municipal budget processes, that the province respect the current Conservation Authority municipal relationships, that the province embrace their longstanding partnerships with the conservation authorities and provide them with the tools and financial resources they need to effectively implement their watershed management role, and that Kettle Creek Conservation Authority forward this resolution to its member municipalities for consideration. That is the motion, ladies and gentlemen. We need a mover and a seconder for the motion, first of all. Moved by?
Bill?
Allison?
Okay. By Bill, seconded by Allison. Okay, do we have any comments on that? I know, Dominique, you perhaps have a comment you would like to make or a suggestion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing further to add. I don't think it's a wise idea. I
Okay,
will not support the recommendation.
okay, okay. Any other comments from members? Okay, with that in mind, then we need to take the vote. So Elizabeth, could you do that, please?
On the motion, Krebitz,
No.
Jiguer,
No.
Herbert,
No.
Jones,
No.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
No.
Harvey.
Yes.
So the motion is tied. I have 5 against, and 5-4.
Okay, so that means it's defeated. Correct?
That's how I always look at it. Tie vote loses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, with that in mind, I would suggest we need to do something. So does someone have any suggestions? A new motion,
Peters?
perhaps? Mr. Peters?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, we do need to, I guess the one part of this resolution that has to happen is we've got to talk to the municipalities.
Right.
And the municipalities, I don't know whether AMO, the provincial organization, has taken a position on this, but there are things in here that people may not like, but the municipalities need to talk about these things, whether it is the representation, the impacts on planning. I certainly want to hear from our planning department in the city as to the implications on decision making, et cetera. And I look at the role that the Conservation Authority has played in dealing with some of our challenging issues where we've been working together as Conservation Authority, municipalities, other ministries to deal with specific challenges. The municipalities need to be briefed on this because it is going to impact on them.
Yeah, it sounds as if they're going to be pretty well equal partners in this, aren't they? So, okay, any other comments at all?
Steve?
Mr. Chair.
Allison?
Yeah, I guess what I need to find out is the people that voted against this. I know Dominique expressed that she felt it was a negative letter. What would you want to do? Would you want to go ahead and recraft a different letter? Like, I mean, I think there has to be some communication. I don't think we can just, vote and have no communication. So what would the next step be to say we can live with this particular piece of communication?
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, Dominique?
Sure, I may respond. Yeah, well, similar to what I said earlier, I think the letter, I absolutely agree. We need a letter. We need a response. But the letter would be, first off, thank you for the, recognizing the commitment to the environment, acknowledging the extensive process, and requesting additional information. And as I said, the recommendation, like amendment by amendment, asking the minister to tell us and pull the curtain on each amendment to say, what is this in response to? Because I agree that we need to talk to our municipalities about that, but even if we were to brief them, we wouldn't be able, I would assume at the municipal level, they would have the same question and say, well, why are they doing that? What issue is this solving? So that the letter would just sound like, as I said, thank you. We'd love to know what you heard that is behind these amendments. We'd love to hear how perhaps CAs, we'd like to take some responsibility and how CAs may have contributed to those issues. And we are willing to continue to work with you to address those issues. But right now, all we have is the solution and not enough information on the problems.
Jim
Okay.
Herbert? Jim Herbert?
Jim? Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm heading in the direction of Dominique. What I see here is what they expect from us. Well, you're going to send this to them. They're going to say, yeah, we knew this was going to happen, and we have all these answers to these comments, but maybe a revised letter accompanied by what Dominique suggests, that we disagree with a lot of the things. And maybe with a letter composed of what Dominique's thoughts are at the end of this would be something new for them to take, instead of just saying, yes, we know you're going to complain about all these things and stuff like that. But with Dominique's thoughts, now they have to come up with a different answer, because we're asking questions now, not related to what the recommendations were about. So I didn't disagree with a lot of this stuff, but a lot of it I agreed with, but there were some I had some concerns with. And, but I agree, we need a letter, maybe a revised recommendation. I don't know, but maybe Dominique, I don't know who would draft a letter up with their concerns. Because when you send that all in together, they expect this. They don't expect what Dominique's suggesting. So it's just my thought. I hated to, we have to do something. I hated to see it as a tie vote type thing. But I don't know. I'm new here, but I don't know a lot of the answers, but I would like to see something done. But I think Dominique's hit on something different, that they're not expecting what Dominique's suggesting we should be saying, we should be asking. So just my thought. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's Grant.
Grant, go ahead.
Thank you. I had a brief discussion with Elizabeth on a topic we'll probably talk about later in the meeting. Also had a chance to talk with Mr. Urick and Minister Urick on the same issue, try and get some clarification. I think obviously the concerns we have are valid. I think it's a combination of identifying the problems we're seeing and asking for clarification from the province. Because when Elizabeth and Joe or whoever has to go to each municipality and negotiate, it'd be beneficial to understand the reasoning behind it. It has the potential to really divide the authority because every municipality has different agendas, and I could see this really blowing up in our face, especially Elizabeth and I were talking about trail systems and the possibility that the trail systems could be have to be paid for by the municipality they're in. So not every municipality has trails. So is everybody going to have to agree at the municipal level to pay for trails that aren't in their municipality? And this could really, really blow up. I hope it doesn't, but there is that possibility. So now when I go to Kettle Creek and I say, well, we don't have any trails and I'm not paying for St. Thomas's Trail or Central Elgin's Trail, they can pay for it themselves. And that is a real issue. And I think we need answers from the province on the reason behind it. Minister Urick did indicate that it's not the general rule that all municipalities are a problem. There's been just a few that have been really problematic to the province and the municipalities that they're in. And I think that we've been painting with a really, really broad brush at this point. So I think a combination of the concerns we have plus asking for reasoning behind the changes, what validates those changes from the province would be great.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Any other comments?
Kravitz?
Yes, Dennis?
I voted no to the resolution because the only thing that in the resolution that was that actually had teeth in it was asking for a longer transition period to December 22nd. That's the only teeth that were in this. Everything else wasn't explained. And the charts that were in our agenda, the proposed amendment and the conservation authority issue, that's a better explanation. The explanation isn't in this recommendation, this resolution. So I like the idea that Dominique came up with of asking for a better explanation of why the proposed amendments are going to happen or why they're proposing them. This resolution isn't following up, or perhaps we should send those charts or forward our charts to our member municipalities and promote some discussion within the municipalities to come back to the conservation. I don't know where to go with this at this point, but the reason I voted no is because I didn't find enough teeth in this resolution. There's a lot of issues that Bill 229 are bringing up, and we need to address them directly, I think, rather than skirting around asking for, just repealing and amending. We're not asking for anything strong here. That's one of the reasons I voted no.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Peters?
Further?
Steve?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, I agree with Dennis that the introductory to everything that leading up to the recommendation, that all that information should be sent to the municipalities, just so that they are aware. I can tell you, having worn another hat at another time, if you think that the government is going to tell you why they made the changes, forget it. That is not going to happen. I can remember being a minister of agriculture and delegating the authority of the Nutrient Management Act to the Ministry of Environment, and every agricultural organization pulling their knives out on me. And it's just the way that it was. And government is not going to explain their rationale. So anyway, we need to keep this issue alive. And if nothing else, let's send all this background information to municipalities, and perhaps they might pass their own resolutions.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Just a brief comment that I'm not naive in thinking that in asking, we're going to necessarily get an answer. So I've earned every gray hair that I have. The point is changing the tone of the conversation. And what they are expecting is a defensive and protective, self-serving response. Whereas I would like to send the message that clearly you've heard some issues. We deserve to know what those issues are, and we will take some responsibility for having contributed to those issues. And that's a very different message, I think, than what has been communicated always in us and them. It takes more than one party to create issues. So the point and the strategy of the letter is not to actually get answers, is to change the conversation around accountability and responsibility and working together.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, it's Councilor Pelosa. Questioning that as someone who voted yes on this, and now we seem to be going in circles, that for anyone who voted no, please put forward your worded solutions for a motion for we can find a way forward on this, unless you're looking at just a motion to receive and do nothing. I'm looking for specific wording of what you want.
Yes, well, I think that was, thanks Elizabeth for saying that. I think that's important that as we, it's now been an hour that our meeting's been going on. We don't want to spend the whole day. I understand as the chair, I understand both sides of it. And I've kept quiet because I'm the chair and I don't really want to say one way or the other. However, as Dominique said, we earn these gray hairs because we have experienced stuff like this. She's talking about tone. And I think as far as people who were negative towards this, it was tone and the fact they wanted to change it to a more positive conversation. To the people who voted yes, it was simply getting this done and pointing out exactly what needed to be addressed. So I think those are the two sides of the coin. If those people who think that there's a more positive way of doing this, if you could scribe something down or type something up or just elucidate for us so that we have an idea of what you're thinking of and we can take a look at it. Okay. But as Elizabeth said, we don't want to get bogged down and just sit here. So anyone else have anything positive or anything more or new to add to the conversation?
So quick question, Jim Herbert.
Yeah, Jim.
So I have no idea what the process or the protocol is here, but we've had a pretty good discussion on why we voted yes and no.
Right.
And I'm going to ask, would it be possible if we make a few changes in the recommendations, could we bring it back and vote on it and then come up with some solutions, as Dominique has said, and submit a second letter and send that in for clarification? If that's possible, I don't know. I know we need to get something started, and
yes,
the sooner the better. And the sooner the better. So I can live with this. We make a few little changes in it, and then if we brought it back for another vote, and then Dominique or whoever could put something together on her thoughts, and then we could submit it. Because when I first read it all, I'm thinking, is there a lot of things broken here that need to be fixed? I mean, I said, holy cow. I mean, the CA has been going on for years and all of a sudden they want to make all these changes. And a lot of people didn't even know the changes were coming until they saw the the information. So, but anyway, I don't know the protocol or process if we could revote on something with a few things taken out of it and then put something together, a second letter send. Because I think, anyway, I'll leave that with you. All right.
Yeah, well, I think what we would need is an additional recommendation or a change to this recommendation is what we would need. So
Mr.
that become,
Mr.
I'm
Chair.
sorry, yeah.
Mr. Chair, if
Oh,
I
sorry,
may.
Elizabeth?
If I may, there's some urgency to the matter. So because Schedule 6 is included in Bill 229, which is a budget bill, this needs to be addressed now because we know the House rises on December 10th, and they're
We have
going.
3 weeks.
They need to pass their budget bill.
Right.
So just listening to the conversation, it might need some finessing, but whereas on November 5th, the province of Ontario introduced Bill 2229, Recover from COVID-19 Act budget measures, which proposes amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act in Schedule 6. And whereas KCCA believes it has been working towards better accountability and transparency with the province, and whereas KCCA has concerns as outlined in the Conservation Ontario Summary of Proposed Amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act and Planning Act dated November 11th, therefore be it resolved that KCCA's Board of Directors requests that the Government of Ontario or the Province of Ontario remove Schedule 6 from Bill 229 and allow for more time for communication of the regulations and communication of how these proposed changes address issues raised in the February 2019 multi-stakeholder consultations.
Okay. I think that's probably about the most efficient way of dealing with this at this point in time. 3 weeks is not enough time to do anything as far as sharing with municipal council and then sharing with the province and getting anything back. So
and I guess I would, based on, again, the feedback from the members, what I would do is prepare a letter to the member municipalities, including the summary from November 11th that Conservation Ontario put out, that the municipalities can review that as well.
Okay. Okay. Members, what do you think? Comments?
I'll put that motion.
Okay, thank you, Grant. So moved by Grant,
Warwick,
seconded by, was that Allison?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So we have a new motion.
On the motion, Kravitz? Marianne, can you verify if Kravitz is still online?
It looks like he dropped.
Giguere?
Yes.
Herbert?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Pelosa?
Yes.
Warwick?
Yes.
Winfield?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
And I'll just check, Kravitz is off the call.
He is.
That motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. That asks for a little bit more time. We'll see whether that is successful or not, but we'll deal with that as we come. Okay, draft budget 2021.
Mr. Chair, for the consideration of members, what I've been working on is a draft budget that considers two different scenarios. One is a 0% levy increase and a 1% levy increase.
Can I just say, sorry, Dennis just messaged me. He's trying to get back into the meeting, but it's locked.
Okay, Marianne, can you unlock it?
He should be able to join now.
So can we bring Dennis up to date on just what happened with the motion?
I'm just going to
Make sure he's on first.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to continue?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry, he's back now.
Or he's back? Okay.
Yep, just joining.
Mary Ann, can you share the screen when you have a chance?
Yep, I'm just locking the meeting.
So, Mr. Chair, what I've done is been working on 2 draft scenarios, one for a 0% levy increase and one for a 1% levy increase.
Okay.
Basically, both of them look at no cost of living increases to the salary grids. They both account for insurance and benefit increases. There's no flexibility really, obviously, in a 0% levy increase scenario. The 1% levy increase scenario accounts for all of the instances in the 0%, but also allows for some flexibility for paperless accounting and floodplain mapping updates. Continue. Next slide. The key cost saving measures that are considered in both scenarios is one, again, no cost of living increases. And even with that, there's an estimated increase of $6,800 for benefit increases, even with no cost of living increase. Both scenarios account for the fact that we wouldn't hire for maternity leave, but would rather backfill that vacancy in 2021. And this would allow us those funds to direct to things such as accounting, paperless accounting software, floodplain mapping. So we have a one-time cost saving that's really going to one-time cost expenditures. We're also looking at operating the pools in the campgrounds as Class B pools. This would save on seasonal wages associated with lifeguards and redirect those savings. And we would be depending on our operational reserves to some extent. We know that in 2020, we probably have a drawdown of upwards of 100,000, if not more. And we would be drawing down in 2021 of 176,000 based on my projections right now. Obviously, those numbers would be reduced if we're successful in the CEWS application. And we recently submitted a request for $148,000 through that program, and we'll wait to hear back from that. Next slide.
Question?
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, under operating, thank you, Mr. Chair. Operating pools is Class B. I'm not sure what a Class B pool is.
That comes up in part 2 of this. So
yeah, and the next budget report on the campgrounds will explain that a little bit more, Jim.
Fine, thank you. I remember reading something about it. Just needed a clarification.
yeah, okay.
So this just details the respective changes in each member municipality in those different scenarios. You'll see a decrease from 2020 conditions in some municipalities, and that has to do with your adjusted municipal, oh, shoot, I can't think of the wording.
Apportionment.
Apportionment, sorry. Your apportionment in each municipality. So 0% would actually decrease for some of you. Next slide. The following chart just is screenshots of what was put out in the advanced agenda. It summarizes the cost savings and expenditures in each department for a 1% and 0% levy increase. Again, the main difference being in a 0%, we have less flexibility to look at floodplain mapping, the paperless accounting, and we would hire one less seasonal position in the 0% scenario. So what I'm looking for guidance from the board members today is which option they would prefer me to pursue at this time, and I can bring back refined numbers in December for a detailed look at at either one of those options.
Okay, thank you. Comments from board members?
Grant, please.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think 0% is a slippery slope at some point. That, if something goes awry, we're going to be pulling more out of reserves than we already are. At some point, that has to stop. You can't just keep pulling from reserves to shore up a budget. I'm kind of leaning towards the 1%. I think that is a safer move from the authority's position, personally.
Thank you, Grant. Anyone else?
It's Dominique, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Dominique, go ahead.
Yeah, so first a comment and appreciation for the recognition of the reality of the municipalities. I think this is something the board had asked staff to look really hard and work hard on. So that's much appreciated. One quick question, in that 1%, I noticed, so the mapping and the paperless initiatives are combined, and I'm curious what the proportion is of each initiative.
Elizabeth?
Basically, they would be about $10,000 each. I'm still refining both options, but it would be $10,000 for the mapping and $10,000 for the paperless accounting options that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Jim Herbert?
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Grant that when you go 0%, you just open yourself up for some problems down the road and you're not able to make any adjustments with it. So you need the 1%, I don't think is a catastrophe for anybody. And I think it's always important to have a little bit of flexibility in a budget, reminding yourself that it is a budget. So right. I would support the 1% for flexibility.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mackie?
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think for the difference in the dollars, the 1% I think would be a solid investment, and it would give the authority just that little bit of cushion. So I would be in support of the 1% as well.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Ralph here, I would again agree with the 1% as being a better option than the 0.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, it's Elizabeth.
Yes, Elizabeth.
I'll move the 1% option.
Okay, thank you very much. Moved by Pelosa, seconded by
Jones.
By Grant Jones, thank you.
On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Campground operations 2021.
Mr. Chair, I'll start this, but Joe can chime in as necessary. The purpose of the report was to mainly present the members with changes to the 2021 seasonal camper application and the campground fee schedule, and look at some operational outlines for the 2021 season. As you know, we operated the campgrounds this year with about 50% capacity. We'd be looking at operating them at 80% capacity next year. And we still will be able to do that, we hope, within guidelines by the health unit, and because we have a greater understanding of how we need to adjust our operations due to COVID. The seasonal application form is updated really to reflect COVID-19 guidelines. This year, we gave campers a lot of flexibility in terms of deciding whether or not to camp under the COVID restrictions. That's simply not sustainable long-term. And so this year, the campers have been presented. Can you just go to the next slide, Marianne? They've been presented with this chart as part of the seasonal camper application that clearly outlines what our restrictions would be in what used to be stages, but we've updated it to reflect the lockdown, control, restrict, protect, and prevent color coding that's now being used by the province. So the campers would have a good idea before they submit their seasonal, before they decide if they want to camp in 2021, what those different scenarios would be. And we'd be asking them to commit by March 1st, whether or not they choose to camp in 2021. Otherwise, they would forfeit their site, and that would open that site up for other bookings.
Okay.
The other scenario that we're looking at, obviously, is we're recommending that we not increase fees in 2021. And this is mainly due to because we still predict that we'll have limitations in terms of the services and amenities that we can offer within the campgrounds. And even with our pricing, Joe's done some comparisons, and we're still comparable to other campgrounds within the area. One cost-saving measure that we're exploring is operating our pools as a Class B facility rather than Class A pool. Under the Class B facility, we wouldn't be required to have lifeguards, whereas Class A, we do have to have lifeguards.
I'm on mute anyway.
One of the reasons we're suggesting that is because under the current advice from the health unit, in order to operate the pools, we would need to maintain one entry, one exit, physical distancing markers. But the biggest caveat is a maximum capacity of 25% of normal. So that really limits the bathing load on our pools, but our highest, we have traditionally had a large trouble in trying to secure lifeguards, and we would need at least 2 lifeguards all the time to be manning that pool, both for the safety of the patrons, but also for the to kind of control who's coming into the pool. By going to a Class B, we can man those with just our regular seasonal staff and not require that certification. Joe, I don't know if you want to add anything to the difference between the Class A and Class B.
Sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. Through you, Mr. Chair. When we look at the Ontario regulation for public pools, campground operations fall under a Class B pool, similar to a hotel. So if you're familiar with going to hotels, there isn't lifeguards. You're required to have certain signage to recognize no lifeguards on duty, and other signage protocols that are outlined in the regulation. The Conservation Authority, like being Kettle Creek, we've always had lifeguards on duty. The recommendation of the health unit inspectors that if you have lifeguards, then you should meet the requirements of a Class A pool under the regulation, because it speaks more to requirements of lifeguard certifications and lifeguard chairs and different things like that. We've always done that just as a more due diligence, higher insurance for the protection of our users. The size of our swimming pools allows for a capacity of 45 to 50 people. So we always felt safer having lifeguards on duty. Recognizing the COVID restrictions that are coming into play, we felt that having lifeguards may be onerous for the restrictions that are there, and we may be able to cover that off with other staff being like pool attendants, being able to control the reservations, making sure there's a competent guardian available with that party who made a reservation to go in the pool. So really what we're posing here or presenting to explore further is operating the pool under the class in which we fall under the category. So we've always exceeded the requirements under the public pools. Now, because of those COVID restrictions, we want to explore the possibility of operating under the classification that we fall under, which helps alleviate some of those costs with having lifeguards on duty. It's not our intention to necessarily have the area unstaffed. We would just be having park attendants that are out and about, controlling the reservations, ensuring the rules are being met, the pool is being maintained, but we would have to change all of our signage so that it's very clear that those staff members are not trained lifeguards for covering the responsibilities of what a lifeguard would normally do.
Okay, great. Jim, does that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so we have any other comments at all? Sorry. Okay, hearing none, we have a recommendation that staff, that the changes to the 2021 season campers application and campground fee schedule be approved, and further that staff investigate operating the Dalewood and Lake Whitaker swimming pools as Class B pools in 2021. Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, moved by Herbert, seconded by Kravitz. Okay, any
On the-
comments? Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Elizabeth.
Question?
Sorry,
Oh,
Steve
question.
Peters has a question.
Okay,
If we move this classification on the pools, are there any insurance ramifications for us? Like if we save on one side, is this going to cost us any other? Does this increase any, and as well any sort of increase of exposure to us as an organization? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the motion just says that staff will investigate this. So that would be one of the questions that we'll be fact-finding on and following up with.
okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, the vote. Elizabeth?
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Thank you very much. Okay, campground Wi-Fi internet towers. Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, this project was part of the approved 2020 budget, but with the onslaught of COVID-19, we set it aside as one cost-saving measure out of the capital budget. We have had some cost savings within that budget, mainly relative to the Dalewood Dam cost savings because we were successful in our wiki application. I'm comfortable in moving forward with this project, but wanted to bring it back to the Board of Directors. Because of the delay, there is a little bit of increase to the price. We originally had budgeted about $10,000, but we're hearing from, when I reached back out to the supplier, he's updated a little bit just because of materials and because the situation on the landscape has changed as well in terms of sight lines. So the recommendation here is to proceed with the installation of the towers previous outlined in, sorry, that should be the 2020 capital budget with a revised upset limit of 12,000 plus HST. And again, these are to put towers up both at Dalewood and Lake Whitaker so we can get higher speed internet out there. Again, I would like to move forward for it because as we deal with COVID, having good working internet is proving probably the most integral part of our business right now.
Okay, thank you. Questions at all, folks?
Kravitz?
Okay, Dennis?
With these Wi-Fi towers, is there any possibility of partnering with people in the surrounding area to utilize this technology as well? I know where I am, I have a hard time getting Wi-Fi, and I have somebody close by the campground would benefit from this.
Mr. Chair, I have reached out to the County of Elgin. I know that they're looking at different services, especially with rural internet. So they are aware that I'm basically that I've been looking at putting this Wi-Fi tower up and they're aware of it and certainly interested in it. So there might be partnerships coming out of this once we get that tower up.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, looking for a mover and seconder.
I move.
Warwick, move.
Okay, Winfield move.
Warwick,
Second.
On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. November Planning and Regulations Report, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report was in the advanced packages, just outlining the staff approvals or comments issued under Planning Act and our Section 28 permits. Happy to answer any questions of the members, but we're just looking for the report to be received.
Okay, any questions, comments? Hearing none, I need a motion for the,
Mackey?
okay, from Mackey, seconded by,
Herbert?
okay, from Ralph,
Yes.
okay,
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes. Okay. We are now at the point where we are going to go into closed session. Sorry, Elizabeth?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I hate to butt in.
No, that's okay.
This does end the open portion of the full authority. I will note that I'd like to add one additional item to the closed session, which is the legal matter property acquisition. The next full authority is scheduled for December 16th, but before we close this open session, what I'd like to do is deal with the open session of the Source Protection Authority before we
Okay.
end the live stream and go to close.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
basically, I'll note that we've recessed the full authority at 11:30. And I
Okay.
know that Bill Mackey has to excuse himself at this time.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Okay, let me see if I can find my agenda. I can't find my agenda. Here we go. Source water. Okay. So I need to go through the preamble again or not, Elizabeth?
I think it's going to be one recording. We'll note that we're still recording. I note that I have all the members except Bill Mackey has now left the meeting.
Okay.
So I have 9
so-
out of 10 members, Mr. Chair.
Okay, declarations of pecuniary interest. Hearing none, having no delegation, minutes of the meetings. So the Lake Erie Regional Management Committee meeting, the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee meeting, the Kettle Creek Source Protection Committee Authority on May 20th. So those are the 3 minutes. You've had a chance to review them,
Jim Herbert here.
okay? Can we move? Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
I'll move the minutes, but it was a lot of reading for me, but interesting reading, but I'll move the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Can we move them all as one, Elizabeth, or do we have to do them separately?
No, we can move them all as one. I'll combine them into one motion, if that's okay with
Okay,
members.
so moved by Herbert, seconded by
Winfield.
Winfield.
So on the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Grant Jones,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no correspondence, so we go to new business. Proposed amendments to the Source Protection Committee Rules of Procedure. Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, this should look familiar to members. Basically, what the amendments do is for the Source Protection Committee, they needed the same flexibility to continue with electronic meetings. So the amendments are very similar to what we've done for our full authority as well. This is just simply a motion endorsing those proposed amendments to the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee's rules of procedures.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions at all, folks? Seeing none, hearing none, I need a mover and a seconder.
Jones.
Jones and
Warwick?
Warwick, thank you very much.
So on the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, and that looks like it's for the Source Protection Authority.
Yes.
So we will adjourn that meeting. What is this up on the screen there?
Oh, sorry. Marianne, take that down, please. Sorry. So
Okay.
that ends that meeting. We will end the live stream.
Okay.
And so we'll maybe take a 5-minute or a couple of minute break. We'll end the live stream and do the closed session.
Okay, so it is 11:37 right now, so we'll re-adjourn at 11:40.
Do we have to re-sign in or we just stay where we're at?
No, just stay where you
You
are,
can just
Jim.
stay where you
Okay,
are.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth, I'll make you the host again.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Chair, we're now in
Oh.
open session recording.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Board, we have a recommendation that the minutes of the October 21st, 2020 full authority closed session be approved. Moved by
Jones?
Jones, seconded by Warwick.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And the minutes pass, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And then just a motion for staff to proceed as directed in closed session. Motion by
Pelosa?
Pelosa, seconded by
Kravitz?
Kravitz.
On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey.
Not here.
Oh, darn it. Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's it for today. Let me take a look. Nothing else on the, nope, nothing else. Upcoming meeting, December 16th. Next virtual meeting. Thank you very much, folks, for your time today.
Have a great day.
Almost 2.5 hours. Have a great rest of the day. And we'll see you
Steven,
guys.
thanks, everybody.
Aye.
Thank you.